Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Paolo here, and finally we have the one of the most awaited item from my production. She has been one of the best seller in 2019 when I made the first edition that was referred to the 2018 car. Little different, It is what we call in Europe the Honda NSX GT3. Instead, in America, is the Acura NSX GT3 Evo. This is the Evo version, so it's the car, the Evo 22. So it's the car that followed the first edition that I made of my Honda. I call them Honda because this team building them for the worldwide competition, it is a team where in another life, about 15 years ago, I've been the truck driver for the company. And it's Honda Racing Europe, Jazz Motorsport. And they are very skilled in making a tourism car, and they started in 2018 the production of this NSX. It is the supercar produced, the street car produced by Honda, hugely converted into the racer, and of course the flares became much bigger, the overall look of the car became much more aggressive, wider, both on the front and in the rear wheel arches. Of course, everything is different, and different from the real car, the racer. Instead of having a twin engine, electrical and thermical engine, she only have a unit powered by Cosworth, so it's a very reliable engine. Nearly never had issues with that, And she is racing all around the world. Quite famous also in America. Acura, there is several Acuras racing down there, and I remember that when I made my first edition of the NSX, it was already going between 2018 to 2019. It was before the pandemic, and there was already a few teams in America, like the Caterpillar car, the one with the female pilots, that they were using already the Evolution version of this car. It was the first one that I've seen racing. I guess it was Daytona, if I'm not wrong, in America. And instead, I decided to produce, after that huge success of my first edition of the NSX, I wanted to produce also the Evo version, that despite in reality is very similar to the first edition car. In the modeling, reality became a little more tricky because all the Evos have quite enhanced aerodynamics, and everything became a little more complicated from a modeling point of view. In the detail, the difference from the first body that I made are mostly located in the front vents. These vents up to the in the front end of the car, the same over these wheel arches. They were not impossible to convert. I remember that several guys asked me for this insert to modify the body from the 2018 version, but my purpose was also to make another round of this nice body, very extremely aggressive, very nice car, completely made by me in the Evo version, mostly because of the rear part. This is the rear hatch. It's quite complicated with all the vents and the different shape. It's also different on this corner here. It's nothing impossible. I've seen some very skilled modelers that made that by their own, and that was not at all the worst part of the conversion. But I remember Jim from Michigan, he made an awesome model. He's an awesome modeler, if you see his builds, his incredible stuff, and he had not really a pain in building up the conversion for the Evo version. If you are a quite skilled modeler, it is not so impossible to make those parts, and to make that conversions, but mostly I had issues with the decal. The decal that down there you see my first sheet, I decided from this version, when I build up a specific car that don't have decals around on the market, or have very few decals, I decide to charge my own graphic to prepare the decal sheet, and the first car that I made is the first edition. It was the car that raced at the Bathurst 2020 during the pandemic, and became quite famous in 2021 with all the pictures and the articles about the car in Mount Panorama, And she was very beautiful racing with the official Honda colors, so the white, the black and the red, with gray spot all over the body. So for the gray spot, this is the decal sheet that I keep available separately from this kit. They are quite complicated and expensive stuff to be produced, as you probably know. Racing kits, despite its quite few parts, I think here we are around 15 parts, something like that, with the little details of the interior. I added the steering wheel that is quite tricky and complicated to find around, the proper seat with the hands around the head of the pilot, and as usual the rest of the dashboard, that is a little screen that you can place over the base of the steering wheel, and the rest I think is still quite easy to convert from the ordinary Tamiya NSX street version that is still required to finish this model. I didn't want to place inside one of that ugly floor made in very very thick resin or ugly plastic just to say that there is an undercarriage. I prefer you to search around for that 30-35 euros of Honda NSX made by Tamiya. That is an excellent kit with excellent part, especially in the transparents, to provide a complete kit you always lack when you try to produce the transparents that in this specific car it's quite complicated because it's very very large. It's half of the body is transparent part, and it is taking together the pillars, instead in my models being so thin. If you already know my models, how thin are my models. They are very very, I think is one of the best caster ever we have around making this and the tracks for myself. But of course some parts like the A pillar here around the door can be extremely complicated to cast because it's too thin. However, in the same condition of the Porsche, of the Callaway that I previously made in my production, and they are still available, it's very very easy that when you build it up with the transparent part, you simply place it tight and make a little dry fit, and all this part will become straight and completely perfect. So I don't think it's so big issues. Is sometimes the A pillar can be a little more wrinkled. To avoid anyway the wrinklage that mostly occurred to me in expeditions overseas, or when these models, several of them have been to Australia, New Zealand, America and so on. So when they travel so much with planes and so on, it happens with the difference of temperature that all the entire roof, if you place my body under the light, look how thin it is. I love to work with this kind of thin plastic. I don't want you to have the bag of dust and sand produced by sanding the resin. Resin is extremely toxic, so when you work with that, you always have to wear protection, gloves and mask. I have a big mask down there, you see, from 3M, and they constantly buy new filters for that. It's mandatory when you work over resin parts, so I always suggest you to be extremely safe when you work with this model, because they are a little more dangerous than the plastic, so it's always better to be a little more protected. So but when you have to sand one of my models, it's something that you can make with a little Dremel, with a little Proxon, whatever you are, like a mini drill, modeling mini drill, and it's extremely easy to keep them cleaned. All the parts that I sell have already a work made by me on every piece that I send around of cleaning. I want my parts to be as clean as possible, in a way that when it arrives to the modeler, some spot like that one, for example, is something very very easy that you clean by your own. Of course it can be different if I ask you to keep straight again a body. This body is anyway perfect, so there is no conditions at all to have that kind of issue. So anyway, I said for America and so on, and for overseas regions, I prepared also some bodies with this, you see, with this big resin cast over. This is something that in the body that already prepared I cut it away, but it's not so difficult. I already made a big engraving line here, so it's not so terrible as it looks. But I think that this keeps straight both the roof, the front and the A pillars during the traveling. When you buy them and you are overseas, I will constantly offer to the guys the possibility to have this part over. Then if they say, no Paolo, we prefer you to take it away, then okay, I sell you one of this one already made by me. But this is nothing. This is something that you make in 3 minutes by your own, and it warranty you that the body arrive without any wrinklage. Not only around the A pillar, that is quite easy to keep it straight again with a hair dryer. It's very very easy. It sounds ugly when somebody says, no, they are dryer fixed, but on this kind of resin it's working really really well, because it make it a little bit, not so much. It's not like a flame that make the plastic melt at once. This is a little becoming softer, and already with your finger you can keep it straight apart, that you see is a little maybe folded during the traveling, you know, little different from the roof because it's very thin and very the same here, you know. The thickness of my resin is constantly very thin. So I wanted the roof to be straight and a little more stable, just mostly during the transportation of the model, you know. So this is a quite interesting option that I still keep available from some of the bodies that I prepared. Many of them, nearly the totality of them have this, but you know, half of the production I think it will travel to America. So because the car is mostly racing there, you know, in Italy we just have some in the GT series and so on, and that they are attempting now with the Danish team to do the Petit Le Mans in 2022, so it's the qualification for the next year Le Mans, but actually still not a car that have raced at Le Mans in the official long Lassart circuit at Le Mans, you know. So, and I think anyway they will make it because the GT3 Evo 22 is really powerful car, performing very well. It's nice. It's a nice vehicle. In my opinion, deeply nicer than the Audi. You know, the Audi is a nice model, not decent model, not excellent model. It's not a Tamiya model kit. It's not something like the Tamiya TS 050 Gazoo Racing made by Tamiya. That is a stunning kit. The Audi GT3 now they have announced also the Evo version. I would like to build up the Valentino Rossi car, but the line of the Audi is constantly the same. You know, the front is identical to the roof. So if you turn the car upside down, you don't know which is the front and the end. So I like much more the NSX. The front end is much more aggressive. Is a nicer car, is a much nicer car. Then remember that when you see them on the track, in the other side there is constantly the official Audi team preparing them. Instead, this is a branch of guys around Milano that were very experienced from the DTM series, but they are a smaller company. So of course, if the car is performing, it means that the vehicle is super, the pilots are great, so the team is great, and they deserve a model, in my opinion. My kit of this GT3 Evo 22 so consists in the main body, you know. I casted again the rear vents because also they became too thin, and the last model that I sold around had little issues, nothing impossible because the parts are straight, so it's very easy for you to cut them away and remake them in plastic. You know, the schema is exactly this one with a little evergreen. I think I also provided in the beginning the code of the evergreen I used, but it's very easy to make them again by your own. Instead, in this newer edition, the rear vents are, the mold is brand new, and I already made and sold some of them, so there is not more that issue. You know, I increased the thickness of just that part, remaining anyway, as I said, very thin. And as well as this part that in the first model was constantly little messing up, not because of my master but because of the position. So there is an undersquare down here, and there is a point where usually the rubber can fix inside, so some copies cannot have the deep detail. You know, as usual, I provide the rear side closed for casting reasons, you know, this vent here, but of course is extremely easy. If you have a little cutter here with a little pin, you cut away this fake net and you replace with a real one. Also because if you use the mechanical from the ordinary Tamiya model, you know, despite if you don't want to show the engine that is slightly different from the ordinary street car, similar but not identical to the street car, mostly because there is a roll cage running around, the opening is different, so there is a little different. But from this side you will see part of the radiators arriving to the engine unit, so this part can be visible when the model is complete. So I suggest always to keep it away, you know. Of course in the casting I had to keep this part present, you know, because it gives stability to the part. You know, this part becomes very thin. If you see the first video that I made of my Castrol NSX, the one racing at Spa, you understand completely what I mean, you know. Other part that are very interesting is this extractor. This is not 3D printed, you know. Sometimes people talk about the 3D printing. Also I do with Andrea from KMP 3D printing, you know, that is quite in my opinion is the best one making modeling this way, you know, the same as Christian from Germany, you know. But usually when they talk about 3D, you find this part with a lot of lines that is the layer of the 3D printer, that is a pain in the ass to clean away. You know, it's really complicated, and every time with that kind of resin you risk to crack it, to make a damage. Nothing impossible to fix, but you know, I still prefer that a proper cast resin is better. So look at the thickness of this, look at this. In reality, this is an extractor made in carbon fiber, so carbon fiber is decimal, you know, it's really micro, is blades, you know. In reality, I made this, you see, I made this. And I said, you have a different wing from the first edition kit, that is this one. You see the shape is completely different from the first car. Once again, you have to make it by your own, the mountings of the rear wings. I think that is not a problem, because also already now they changed it 2 times during the 2002 season, the mountings, the pillars for the wing. The first edition had a very long L coming up here. As usual, you know, when you buy my kits, I provide you the folder giving you the tips on how to build it with inspiration from the actual car. Instead, the latest version have a wing that is much more near and much more connected to the body. It's much more easy because it's simply a straight line going up, so it's much more easy, you know. And as I said, if you like this version, I already prepared the first one of 3 sheets that is arriving. This is dedicated, as I said, for the Bathurst car racing in 2020. It was, I think, December 2020 or the beginning of 2021. I don't remember the exact date, but it was the first race when they restarted after the pandemic, you know, down there in Mount Panorama. Excellent track. I love the track, you know. And I am preparing also that will be sold separately, because this is stuff that I make printed by my own to a service, so it's a little increased price compared to the ordinary decal sheet that you can buy around 25 to 30 euros. Is a little more pricey, this one. I provide also, as folder down there, a dime made in paper that you have to cut by your own on tape to do the masking of the car. You know, I place the insert of the red spot that I will try and fit over this body, because my one will be finished in Honda color, in official Honda colors, and so the gray spot of that livery will be made by airbrush over the body. You know, it's a little bit tricky and complicated, but I think it's absolutely worth it. I also added in the decal, you know, Andrew Z is excellent gravity, do this stuff, is amazing doing this job, you know. Also the fake lights they have in the front for the Bathurst race, and some version have that, some version don't have that, so you have to check the picture. And every time I provide a little extra decal of everything, so there is not one, but there is always 2, 3, so you have a lot of spares if you have problems and issues while applying the decal, you know. And this was the first version that I already made. I'm finishing in these days the checking of the measures, now that I have the body in my hands, about the real racing IMSA car, that is the American white, purple and blue car racing in America. Also there I try to ask to the team if they could help me. I never get a fuck you man. I didn't get anything at all from them, so I had to make it by my own, studying the picture, but that's my story, so for me it's not this big issue. It's, people like that, I like that, so I wanted to do that sheet, and the sheet is already done, so I just have to make the proper measure of that sheet, and it is already in production. And then I am preparing also the black and red car racing from Arta in Japan. Arta NSX is fantastic car. If you check the picture of that, is dramatically nice, because it have the red that is shading over the black, red and black shaded all over with all the writings. You know, it's a little bit complicated to understand some Japanese writing that they have over. I don't have anybody helping me in that. Sometimes I can try to ask to some Japanese that I know also for other stuff, you know, if they can help me in understanding what kind of logo is this or that. But I think that also the Arta version will be in progress. So from this car, I a little bit tired to wait the extra producer of decal, because sometimes they do excellent stuff, sometimes they don't do anything at all. In the beginning, I was nearly sure, because I sold to them also my body, I was thinking that they make a little more of the production, but at today just I think it was just Frank from Decal Doc that made his attempt to make 3 or 4 livery of this car, and mostly about the first edition of the NSX gt3, so not the Evo car. The only Evo was the Caterpillar car that have some issues on the number of the roundels over. So if you search around, or if you ask directly to Jim that made the wonderful model that you see around, he made that, and he can explain you how does it work with that type of article, you know. And so I decided to start to make my own decal. Remember that if you go to my catalog that you can download and save in alsolatino.com, that is my ordinary website, there is constantly the last catalog that you can see. All the decal sheet of all my models, trucks, planes, and so on are available, and I can sell them separately. So if you need them, just give me a PM and I can provide you anything you want. I did already for the 966 Porsche. I already did the sheet for the Alpha 156 WTCC. So there is a lot of decal also there. Of course, I make them under request, so it takes a little time from you order that to me, and then I have to order that to the printer service that will post it directly to you. So that's it. I hope you like it. I simply love this Honda NSX. I'm the only guy in the world that, excluding the pilot and the people working on the real car, I am the only one in the world that is making so many models about this wonderful Honda. Hope you like that too, and see you in the next video. And I probably also will do some more videos during the build up of this wonderful Evo car. Thanks for watching.